want some sauce?
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.
Here's a boneless chuck roast. And this is going to work just fine for what we're doing. Now, I'm trying to keep this in a 1 to 2 servings portion. So I'm going to end up maybe cutting just right around here. So for what I'm making, this is what we're going to use. Okay. Now, just like always, I'm going to get a pan really hot, and I'm going to start this almost like I'm going to be cooking a steak. So I want to sear it. Before I sear this, I need to season this really well. I'm going to turn the heat on. I'm going to jack the heat up. I'm going to grab some kosher salt here. Push it in. This may look like a lot of salt, but by the time we're done with a lot of this stuff, we're going to be just fine. Okay, so we've got that. Fresh ground pepper. Put a liberal amount on there. Okay. And then the bottom part of this, I'm just going to end up kind of scraping up everything that fell. And there we go. Now we need to put some olive oil on this. And we put the olive oil on the meat and not in the pan. Okay. So, and we don't need a lot. We just need enough to kind of cover the surface of this just a little bit. So I've got a pan here that is on medium high, and I'm trying to get this guy really hot. Now, and it's okay if it sticks a little bit to the pan. You might have a fire alarm go off. But during the time that this is searing, I'm cutting up an onion. Okay, it's getting pretty smoky in here. We're going to put that there. But I think that that right there is seared enough, so I'm going to end up taking it out. Lower the heat a little bit. Don't want to burn this. Onions. Put a little bit of olive oil in that. Here's some coarsely chopped garlic. There's a few carrots. Now I'm going to end up adding a red wine to this to deglaze, as well as add some flavor to the beef. And this one, I actually really like this. I haven't drank this in a long time because of the sulfides, but it's a very good wine. And the alcohol in this might go up, so be careful when you put that in there. And you'll see that it deglazed the pan. Putting it back inside here along with any juices that may have come out while we had done that. We're going to add some diced tomatoes to this. You can see there's not really too many. You can use tomato paste if you want to. Because I had just added another ingredient, we have to put enough salt for that particular ingredient. So we have that. Same thing with the pepper. Golden. We're going to add a little bit of stuff from the garden. Right here is some rosemary. It's a little strong, so be careful with it. This is fresh thyme. And I'm just going to end up pulling all the leaves off of the thyme here. If it's a thin stem, you're going to be okay. This is dried parsley. I'm going to put a little bit of that inside there. I'm going to add a little bit more wine to this. I'm going to be putting some potatoes inside here. A little bit of water in there because I want to almost cover everything. If I had a bigger pot, I would cover everything, but I'm trying to make this for one person. And now we are going to put this inside an oven, 325, and we are going to let this bake for at least an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe 3. Okay, so inside here I have got half a cup of sugar. Okay, I've got about 1/3 of a cup of brown sugar. It's light brown sugar. A little bit of water, and when I say a little bit, maybe a tablespoon. And I have some light corn syrup in here. I maybe put a tablespoon in there. Okay. The reason why I put the light corn syrup in there is to help prevent the sugar from, it's preventing it from crystallizing. Okay. So it's not in there really for flavor. It's in there to make this stuff basically not want to form sugar crystals and whatnot. But I have this now where it is not boiling, it is simmering. And what we want to do is we want this to caramelize. And basically we want to burn the sugar. And so we're going to go ahead and let this do its thing. Okay, so this at this point, this is pretty well caramelized right here. Okay, and so I'm going to add about 3/4 of a stick of butter. This is my egg yolk and milk mixture, and I'm going to mix this up very well. I'm going to put a couple of capfuls of vanilla extract inside here. That alcohol is going to evaporate real quick. Now we pour our cream. You'll see that this is kind of hardened up a little bit. It's okay, it'll go back into solution. I'm also adding the milk with the eggs. We need to bring this back up to temperature, and that sugar is going to melt. As soon as this comes back up to temperature, as soon as that sugar melts, and this is homogenized, basically being everything is just like one soupy mix, because there's a little bit of sugar still that hasn't melted, but it's getting there. At that point we can refrigerate this, wait for it to cool, and then put it in our ice cream maker, or like I usually do, just throw it in the ice cream maker. Okay, either way it's going to end up cooling, right? So the sugar has for the most part melted back inside. Okay, there's a little bit on the spoon that'll come off too. And I can taste this, and I'll be able to tell if I need to add more sweetness to it, or if I need to add more vanilla extract or butter or whatever. And what we're making here, just in case you don't know, this is essentially like a butterscotch that we're just adding a little bit more cream to. But at the same time, it also tastes almost like a caramelized milk in a way, like a dulce leche, right? So it's sweet, but it is also something that is not normal. I mean, it's definitely not the usual ice cream. Cool. Okay, so at this point, this has been cooked. The eggs will have thickened this up a little bit, because essentially you're making a custard that's just real thin when you're making ice cream. The more egg yolks you put in there, the creamier it's going to end up being. But before we pour this into our ice cream maker, we need to run it through a strainer just to make sure there's no egg particles. And that is normal practice, so don't freak out. And you don't want this to go all the way to the top, because it's going to add air to it during the time that it's cooking, and then it'll end up overflowing. So don't do that. But there is our little egg pieces. And that's normal. Don't freak out. And we start her up. Okay, it's time to make our Yorkshire pudding. So even though it's called a pudding, don't expect this to be what an American would call pudding. This is more of like a roll, a muffin, a puff pastry. It's definitely not what we call a pudding, but that's what it is. Okay, so that was 3 eggs, This is a half a cup of whole milk, a little bit of salt, a half a cup of flour. What some people will do is they'll put a spoon in there, and if it sticks to the back of the spoon, they say that's the right consistency. So now we got to get this ready. We got to prep this for baking. When we bake this, we want this to be in about a 370, 375 degree oven. It's going to take about 20 minutes. Depending on where you're at, might take longer, might take less, but figure about 20 minutes. And you'll know that they're done. You'll know because they'll be golden brown all the way around. Okay? And then during the time that they're baking, do not open that door until they're done. Because if you open them, they can fall. Okay, so don't do that. So that's done. Some people will use beef drippings, and you can do that. I'm going to end up using lard. Okay. Okay, that's probably enough. I'm going to put this in the oven and I'm going to preheat it for about 20 minutes. Okay, when it starts making that noise going back and forth, that means that ice cream's done. I got to take it out and I need to transfer it into a container, put it in the freezer quick. Right now, this is what we'd consider soft serve. Okay, so I just took this out of the oven and it's been in there for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Let me remove these bay leaves. Half a stick of butter in there. A little bit of salt, just for the mushrooms that we put in there. A little black pepper for the mushrooms that we put in there. And then this is going to end up going back inside the oven. And we not only want this to kind of cook, but we want the moisture to reduce, and it will. Okay. And I'm increasing the temperature of the oven right now to 375 so I can cook my Yorkshire puddings inside there as well. That's about how much you want in there. And I'm going to end up pouring this batter in here. I'm going to use just a measuring cup, trying to make sure I don't have any drips, because I don't want any to get inside there. Oops. I want to fill it up to about there. And then after I fill these up, put it back in the oven and try not to get any drips or anything on the outside of the muffin tin, because during the time that it's rising, if it ends up grabbing, you might pull it and prevent it from rising the way that you want it to. This is going to go back in there, and I am not going to open that until these are cooked. Give it anywhere from 15 to about 25 minutes, just depending on your location. Okay, I got to reduce this this liquid that's inside here, because this is going to end up being a gravy essentially. And if I end up just trying to boil it out right now, these potatoes that are in here, everything else is just going to end up getting overcooked. So I'm going to end up removing the meat, which has shrunk considerably. So I'm going to try to get the liquid out of this. And then that liquid is what we're going to end up turning into the gravy. Everything else can go off the fire. If you want to thicken this, you can also end up putting a little bit of starch or something inside this to thicken it. And there's really nothing wrong with that. You could put flour, you could put cornstarch, anything like that. But I want this to reduce a little bit to make it a little bit thicker of a gravy. And I am going to be adding a little bit of starch to this. And I'm not going to go crazy with the amount of cornstarch, but I definitely want to have enough in here that it will start thickening up as it starts to reduce. I don't, you know, what I put right there is probably more than enough. So I had broke my cardinal rule, and I opened up the oven too early, and it caused my Yorkshire puddings to kind of fall a little bit. That's okay. they're still going to be just fine. When cutting this, if you look at it, you'll see that this is on a bias, and I had already cut some. But if I cut it this direction, it'll be really tender when the person ends up biting into it. Okay. Unfortunately, you guys didn't get to see me plate up any of this. My camera wasn't on, but it's alright. Because I've been working on that gravy, and it's a thin gravy right now. If I let it reduce even more, it'll be better. But with it the way that it is, if I put it like this, this will make sure that that roast beef really has a very good flavor to it. Pour a little bit over the vegetables, a little bit over the potatoes as well. Then you can use the Yorkshire pudding to soak up some of that, of course.
Oh my god, this meat, you can't... It's like you can't stop eating. She's eating her food. I felt like a pig, Mom. Yeah, it's really good, but I think this one, I like this one better than that.
The bourguignon?
Yeah, even though that one was really good, but I think this one, the sauce, I like better. And it helps that you made these little little things or whatever they're called.
Oh, the Yorkshire pudding?
Yeah. Oh my god, I can tell it's creamy already. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good, babe. It's creamy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the candy, you know, those yellow candies.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of when I first took it. I was like, oh my god, is this butterscotch?
Yeah, I tried making butterscotch ice cream.
It definitely tastes like that. Oh my god, this is so creamy, babe. You can just tell by...
I know, when I was scooping it up, it was like that. Anyway, guys, that is that. That is my roast beef with gravy. I got my potatoes that are roasted within, but they're also boiled in the same stuff, so it's got big flavor. I got my mushrooms with some carrots and other veggies, which primarily tomatoes and stuff like that. But it's a nice little side here. And my Yorkshire pudding. So, hopefully you enjoyed it. And until next time, I'll talk at you later.